Hey there, everybody. Welcome back to the Teach Them Diligently podcast. I am your host, Leslie Nunnery, and I am so grateful that you've chosen to join us here today. You know, when I was younger, graduating from high school, the expectation was that you were going to go to a traditional four-year college. You were going to get a degree and pursue something in that field or pretty close to that field. Actually, the expectation was that you'd probably change your major four times, that you'd completely be lost, but you'd end up on a path. That has changed so significantly over the years. In fact, that expectation has even changed quite a bit since our oldest child, who is 25 now, launched out 7 years ago to start college. And so, for those of you who are raising high school kids now, you need to be aware of what the realities are in higher education, what the expectations are, so that you know that there's a whole lot of different options available to your kids, and so that you can push them or direct them, help prepare them for the way that is best for them. So today I'm very excited to have joining me Andrew Chambers, who is the head of campus life for Excel College. They have a very unique approach to higher education that I'm excited for him to tell you about, but also they played a huge role in the disaster relief efforts after Hurricane Helene. And we want to talk about that, talk about what's the reality there now, talk about how their students were able to get involved and get a vision for what it looks like to get in and help people who are at their lowest. So this is an episode that you do not want to miss. It will be really informative for you, both on how to prepare your kids for the next step in their life, but also to enlarge your vision of what your kids can be involved in as they launch out and continue being the hands and feet of Jesus to others. So stay tuned. Andrew, welcome back to the podcast. I am so glad that you're joining me here today.
Hey, Leslie, it's good to be on again. Thanks for having me.
Well, you are very welcome. For those who may not have heard, you've been on with me before. I always enjoy talking to you. But for those who may not have listened to those episodes, can you tell us a little bit about what you do there at Excel College, but also kind of explain what makes Excel College so unique?
Yeah, so I'm our head of campus life here. So got a couple hats that I wear. So I run our marketing and recruiting teams and our men's discipleship as well, and just
Hmm.
student experience, which is a lot of fun. So my wife and I and our two kids live on campus. So does the rest of our faculty and staff. So that's one of our big things is for students when they graduate, we want them to be ready to build healthy marriages and families,
Hmm.
not just get a job. And we think if you're going to be ready to build a healthy marriage and family, you have to be around healthy marriages and families. And so we do that life on life discipleship. So all of our students, they live in homes, they don't live in dorms. And we really do life around the table together, which is awesome.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been great to be a part of that. Our thing, something else I tell people is like, we think healthy people build healthy families, build healthy communities.
Hmm.
And the more that so when you graduate college, college is that journey, whether we like it or not, from adolescence into adulthood.
Yep.
So someone is discipling your kids, and are they going to continue the journey that you started, or are they going to take them on a completely different one? And so for us, when they graduate, they shouldn't just be ready to get a job, which is an important
Hmm.
part of being a healthy adult, but they should also be able to like love a wife and kids well, have a thriving faith life, like learn how to be a thriving member of community, um, handle a budget, clean the house, that kind of stuff. And so, yeah, that's a
I love that. And as you were describing it, I was thinking, this is why it's so perfect for Teach Them Diligently families, because everything that you just said resonates with all of us so much. We want our
mhm.
kids to be holistically ready to pursue God in this next stage of their life in all areas, family, work, community, church, all of these areas. And you guys do a really great job at dealing with all of those things strategically, but also being very intentional in investing in the kids that go there, to make sure that they get a good view and a continuation of the discipleship that they've gotten within their home. How are you able to do that? Meaning, how many students do you have on campus? How does that look practically for the parents who are sitting there thinking, oh, this sounds really cool? What does that look like from, kind of a coming in and joining the family there aspect?
Yeah. So as far as like coming into the culture and just getting into the flow of things, um,
Yeah.
Yeah, so for us, we do these things called all teams. There are community nights on Tuesdays and Thursday nights, and
Mm.
we eat dinner together, we worship together, and then on Tuesday nights we either do a lot of worship or we go do something fun. And so we'll go play a game we call bucket ball out in the field, or we'll play, which is like a basketball, soccer, frisbee mix, or we'll play board games in the center. And then on Thursday night we do a practical professional teaching along with worship and dinner and life together. So we really like teach them how to do like life together like that. And it's actually a class that we consider it a class. Like it's attendance
Mm.
that they like need to come to, because and people ask like, why do I have to come to the gathering? Like, why is that a class? And it's like, well, like, Paul talks about like, don't neglect the gathering of believers together, and it's really important
Right.
to learn how to do life together. And so that's a big thing. And then like just when I say all of our faculty and staff live on campus, I mean they literally live on campus, and
Mm.
the students, they all live in homes. And so like every weekend there's people going out rock climbing, or right now people are going snowboarding, and people come over to my house in the fall for football games, and we smoke meat on the big green egg, and then we watch football. And
I
so
love
it's just
this.
it's literally like church, church potlucks, like kind of all
Yeah.
the time. So um yeah.
Well, and I love that because community is something that is so missing today. Like so
Hmm.
many people, even in the healthy, even in good churches, I don't know if they're as healthy because of this, but they just don't know how to live in community with other people. It has been so siloed and people have been so isolated for so long that the fact that you are really giving these kids a taste of what it feels like, what it looks like to do life in community with other believers, I think is going to profoundly impact every church that they go out into, because they're instilling that amount of life back into the body there. And I think that that is an element of what you all do that just needs to be celebrated among all of these other things.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And like we tell students all the time, like, you are our letter to the world around us, just
Mm.
like Paul talked about, like you are, letters read by men. And because we're, being under religious exemption instead of accreditation, like we are taking a bet that we put out better, not better people, but more wise, mature, and productive
Yeah.
people who are healthy, thriving members of community. And that says more than someone that's just got a job that makes $150,000 a year.
Right.
So
Oh, for sure, for sure. But you all prepare your kids in more ways than just those practical community doing life ways. You also, I know that within your model, the kids work alongside of others. They have the opportunity to volunteer. Talk to us about some of those elements and how they've shown up recently by opening great doors for ministry and service for these kids.
yeah, yeah, that's awesome. So one of our big things is like, college is not just about getting a job. However, becoming a productive adult is a big part of adulthood. And so
Right.
your job, although it's not who you are, it's an expression of who you are, and you bring the gifts that God has given you to the marketplace. And so our students are required to work all the way through school.
Mm.
And part of that's because they pay for half their tuition, because we think learning how to pay bills is good for you.
Yep.
And we don't care if their parents make 30,000 a year or $1 million a year. They're gonna pay half their tuition, and they're gonna work 20 or 25 hours a week. Um, and then that's while they're in the classroom phase. And then the second phase, a lot are, so they're either in apprenticeships, internships, or independent research studies. So what that means is, like, they're either out in the marketplace full time, learning and working, and that's how they're getting their college credit. We have a
Hmm.
virtues curriculum that we do as well during that time, but they're learning how to apply the virtues in the marketplace. Um, or they're doing the certificates necessary to be able to get into a place where they can get hands-on experience. So for some jobs like welding, you need MIG, TIG, and SIG experience certificates before they're going to let you come and weld. Whereas a lot of the trades jobs, they'll actually train you from the ground up. And so depending on the job, we're either helping them get the certifications they need, or they're just getting the hands-on experience they need to get into the marketplace. And so the marketplace is literally half of what we do. So Hurricane Helene hit us on September 30th, which was 14 days after our newest class got here.
Oh.
And yeah, so totally unexpected. I mean, if you've been watching the national news, it wiped out our region. And I kid you not, like, my wife and I were watching the news that night, Thursday night, and as the hurricane was hitting Florida, and they kept flashing Asheville on the screen, and we're like, why is Asheville flashing on the
I
screen?
know. We thought the
Um,
same thing here in Greenville. We're like, what in the world?
yeah, and we were like, maybe they're just doing that because that's where we're at. And then we're like, okay, should we cancel class tomorrow? Well, all of our leadership team was like, well, if power's gone, we'll cancel class. And then little did we know, it wreaked complete havoc.
Yeah.
And for 3 days, the waters didn't stop rising, and so rivers got 30 feet beyond their banks. And um, when a hurricane hits, it typically takes out a couple of neighborhoods. Well, here, what people don't understand is it rained for 10 days before the hurricane even hit. And so we had landslides before the hurricane even got to us. And then, you wake up Friday morning and it's still raining. Saturday it stopped raining, but the river's still rising. Sunday the river's still rising. By the time it's all said and done, we had over 1,500 landslides, 100,000 homes were damaged, over 1,000
Wow.
destroyed. The big landslide you see on Fox News that closed down I-40 is a quarter mile up from our school. Actually, one of our students took that picture with a drone.
No way. Really?
And oh yeah, and
Wow.
they shut down all the major roads to the region. So we were like Western North Carolina was a bowl that you could not get in or out of.
Yeah.
And we had some amazing friends of ours bring up generators so we can get wells going on campus because our students were here and no one could get out. So we had 100 people that we had to take care of, and so they activated into gear. We got generators, so we got wells up and going. People brought us gas. Some great organizations like Adventures Relief, United Cajun Navy were like, hey, like we're bringing stuff. Are you ready for it? And what was amazing was our college has been growing, and so we had a community center, but we outgrew it. And so 3 weeks before the storm hit, we had built this structural tent that's 3,500 square feet and paved 12,000 square foot of pad around it so that we could actually do our gatherings in the tent. Well, it was still empty because we hadn't fully finished it yet. And so all of a sudden, people were calling us saying, "We got a semi truck full of supplies. Can we bring them your way?" Uh, and of course, we're not having class right then. So our students, who are in the marketplace for half of their college experience, all of a sudden 90% of them lost jobs. The only 10% that still had jobs worked for the Cove, which is where Samaritan's Purse staged out of. And so we had 100 people on campus that were like ready to go, and we had some alumni that are paramedics now. We're finishing up paramedic school, and so on day 2 we received 7 helicopters in a field at Ridgecrest down the street. We received semis at 3:30 in the morning. We ended up pushing out over the next month over 2 million pounds of supplies, 150 generators. Glenn Beck is his nonprofit Mercury One. So shout out to JP Decker. They sent us 125 generators that we were able to get out into the region.
Wow.
And we did over 50 wellness checks for the town of Black Mountain. And we were pumping out trucks every day, taking like generator kits to homes to get their electricity up and going, but then also food and water and meal kits. And we had a whole medical team that stationed on our campus that had 10 UTVs that would go out. They would drive as far as they could, go out up and over the mountain and rescue people that needed rescuing. And they would take out supplies in the morning. So it was just like our students. It was really incredible. I mean, it was incredible because they could have whined, they could have quit, they could have went home, and instead they stayed. And not only did they stay, but they became a huge part of the recovery here. And Asheville's not a Christian town by any means, and so a lot of
Yeah.
people that wouldn't normally have anything to do with Jesus got to see firsthand like the work that these guys were doing. And a lot were helping other employees from their jobs. And I mean, it's just story after story of students using their own trucks to go out or and take supplies, and staying up late at night to deliver supplies, and cooking for 120 volunteers on campus. And and really an unbelievable effort. And then after 2 weeks, we started class back to start that kind of transition back into normalcy. And so then they were doing a mixture between trying to find a job and volunteering again. And we've kind of slowly progressed throughout the fall to get to where 99% of them are back employed again. And now we formed a coalition with Adventures Relief, Operation Blessing, and World Vision, and still getting help from Mercury One and Cajun Navy and those guys. And we've committed to building 200 plus homes back here
That's
in
incredible.
Western Carolina. So while our students are back kind of doing the college thing, and we've got a bunch of disaster stuff still on campus that we're transitioning to another property after January, and but they're back to doing the college thing, but we're receiving a bunch of volunteers now to kind of help going out and keep rebuilding the region. So
Wow. Wow, that's just incredible. And I want to go back to a couple of things that you said because I don't want them to be glossed over. God knew in advance what the need would be, and you already had a tent, you already had a place to house all of this material coming in to invest back in this just ravaged area.
Yeah,
I don't I every time that I see things like that, it
yeah,
strengthens my faith. And I can't even imagine the impact that that had on these young people who got to see firsthand God's sovereignty, his provision, how he is good even in the midst of disaster. All of these things that are going to strengthen their faith going forward, they got to live through. And that is such such a privilege. I know it was hard,
mm,
I know it was difficult, but what a privilege it is to be able to see God show up so clearly in
yeah,
the matters of men. And I'm so grateful that you brought that up because I think that that is something that I want to celebrate, just God's goodness and foresight in that.
yeah. I mean, we said something like God is always previous. Like
Hmm.
we literally had a 3,500 square foot empty warehouse, like that was
Amazing.
supposed to be and it just went up 3 weeks before, and it's withstood 80-mile-an-hour winds, and it's a
I
tent.
was about to say, and it
Yeah,
stood when everything else
yeah.
around it was falling down. That's incredible.
Oh yeah, and the
Just
tree that took out Mr. Hopi's truck next door was, I don't know if people weren't two like 3 or 4 feet in diameter, missed the
wow.
tent by 6 inches.
Oh
Um,
my goodness.
and yeah, and so I mean, amazing. And then just the connections where people called and started sending supplies and semi trucks. And I mean, we not only had to all of a sudden feed 100 people, but then we were able to start feeding the community as well. And so
Huh.
one of my bosses says, if God can get it through you, He'll get it to you. And
Mm,
and so we think like, just we had a yes in our spirit for, hey, like we will be your hand, like we will, yes, we will be your hands and feet, like we'll
yeah.
distribute this stuff. So
Wow. Wow. What have you heard from the students coming out of this opportunity? Have they been impacted by just the opportunities that God has given them? Do they recognize all the things that God is orchestrating and that they have been able to play a part in something that's not only really unique but profoundly impactful for the kingdom?
Oh, 100%. And it's funny. So for the ones that just got here, they don't even know what life at our college is like without it. I mean, honestly, so it's kind of, and we're it was such an honor to be a part of all this, and for them, it's things that they'll remember for the rest of their lives. And at the same time, it was really interesting because so we were at the base we were here on campus, which became our base most of the time, and so we're running trucks out over the region, but most of them spent most of their time operating the distribution space. And so
Mm,
they actually, a lot of them really didn't even get to see the fruit of their labor,
mm.
um, because they're doing it all here versus like you don't see the person that we're setting up a generator in her home. She's 80 something years old. We're setting up a generator in her home and getting her
Wow.
blankets so she can stay warm. And so really being able to communicate, that was big for us, to being able to communicate to them like this is the impact that you're having. And then and even encouraging them like, hey, you need to go drive down to Swanville, go drive down to River Arch District and go see. Um, and and so for a lot of them, it was a mixture between like a hopefully a once in a lifetime thing that's a real honor to be a part of, and like honestly like for us, we're like the wisdom, maturity, productivity thing, like we've proved it. Like
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
stepped up in such a major way, like no complaining, no regrets, like um really stepped in. And then at the same time, they're college students who aren't disaster workers,
Hmm.
and they didn't sign up
Right.
to be disaster workers. And so for us, getting them back into normal as quick as possible, so that they can have their college experience is really
Right.
important to us. And so,
Right.
um,
Yeah, that's just incredible. And I'm sure that the none of you up there are saints. So there were moments where tempers flew, patience grew thin, all of the things that happens because we are humans. But the lessons learned, I am sure will stick with all
oh
of
man,
you for the rest of your life.
yeah, yeah, and some of the cool stuff too. I'm something again I'm really proud of them for is just the way that they've blessed their employers and their
Mm.
coworkers at work. So we actually ended up raising $60,000 to buy gift cards from local businesses. And we say, something they call the disaster after the disaster, which is all these businesses that had to shut down or they
Yeah.
don't have people coming anymore. And we are in a tourism dependent area
Right.
because
Right.
the Blue Ridge Mountains. And so October is our busiest month of the year by far because of the leaf season. I mean, this year in
Mhm.
Greenville. So like,
Yep. Yep.
um, and everyone missed it. Everyone, like not a single person didn't miss it. And then winter is your dead season.
Right.
And so I get a notification about a business closing in Asheville like every 3 to 4 days. And
Goodness.
and for us, one of our big things is like we know almost all the business owners in town and love them because our
Yeah.
students work there. So we built these relationships. And so we're like, we don't want that to happen. So we raised $60,000 and we're able to buy these gift cards and then give them to first responders, disaster workers. We actually gave them to the entire staff of the town of Black Mountain because they all mobilized during the disaster. And then being able to bless Adventures and Operation Blessing and Black Mountain Home for Children. So we are able to bless a lot of these people that have worked really hard in all this, and also help keep these businesses up and going.
Yeah.
So that's been a big deal as well. And the students like wrote cards for everyone and baked cookies, and so
Well, that is
that's
that
awesome.
is awesome. Yeah, yeah. Again, God's present in all of these details, and it is so encouraging to hear the stories. I think that, like me, a lot of people are wondering what is the reality there now. We're in a much colder time of year.
Yeah.
I know in Greenville, there's been a big move sending coats up, stuff like that for people who just lost everything in a one
hmm
fell swoop. What is the reality up there now? For those that are just kind of wondering where things stand with the people who were displaced and so on.
Yeah. So I mean, the reality is there's still 1,500. I can't
Wow.
remember if the number is families or people. I think it's families
Yeah.
that are out of their homes. 1,500, and that's an incredible amount of people. And
Yeah.
um, a lot of these restaurants, like those employees are never coming back.
Yeah.
Or um, and so and you can't, if you get a voucher to a hotel, if your hotel's an hour, 2 or 3 hours away, like how do you work still? So there's a lot of that. I'm sure you've seen there's a ton of criticism in the news about FEMA, and there's a ton of conspiracy theories about all that. But at the end of the day, there are people that still need help and
Yeah. Yeah.
need to get back in their homes. And I would say from a supplies standpoint, like food and coats and all that kind of stuff, we've gotten a lot of that. And now it's
Good.
just
Good.
the
Good.
really practical kind of non-sexy TV work of like just rebuilding homes to get people
Yeah.
back in. And it's going to take time. We're committed for 2 years to see it till we hope it's finished within 2 years.
Wow.
But I mean, like your home's got to be, if your home had 5 feet of water in it, it's got to be back up to code before you
Yeah.
can get in there. And so I will say, one thing I will say, absolutely 100%, the power of the body of Christ in the church
Mm,
being activated to do the work of the Lord is incredible.
that's awesome.
And like the biggest thing I saw was, FEMA got here day 9, and by that time we were kind of done with rescue phase, and
Yeah.
everyone I had met were Christians or NGOs that had just been like, I mean, there's a bunch of great organizations I want to give shout outs to, like, Son Hendricks from Mr. Beast's team, like JP at Mercury One and Adventures Relief and Obi and all those guys. And then there's these, like, my sister-in-law connected with Blessings of Hope up in Pennsylvania, and they sent a whole semi trailer full of stuff.
Wow.
Or there's this town in Pennsylvania, there's a lady named Cherish Schwartz.
Mm,
She called me and she was like, "Hey, what do you guys need?" It was just sending like very targeted things, whereas a lot of people would send like a whole trailer full of used clothes and stuff,
yeah.
like.
Yeah.
But she's sending very targeted, like, here's tools, here's water filters, and like exactly what we need. And I finally was like, "What organization are you with?" And she was like, I'm not with an organization. My dad has just been. I'm in a small town in Pennsylvania. My dad has been doing business here for 50 years. People trust us. They gave us $27,000 and
Amazing.
said get it where it needs to go. And I can attest she did. And it's just stuff like that. It was amazing. It was amazing. And we would not have. I mean, we would not have been where we are without the body coming together. My buddy Miles from Harvest Catering Company, he was like, he's got a wife and a kid and a catering company, and he said, I'm coming up for 4 days to cook to give your kitchen team a break. And he literally spent a week prepping before he got here, came and cooked for 4 days straight without sleeping, and then
Wow.
just went home. I mean, it was amazing.
Wow.
So
That's so exciting to hear. And we don't hear those stories near enough. So I'm so
no,
thankful that you shared that with us because um it's exciting. It's encouraging to hear that the body of Christ is mobilized, that we do hear of needs and we physically go out and meet them because that's we are called to do, to care for the widows and the fatherless, and in this case the homeless and the displaced. And it's very exciting to hear of the obedience
hmm
and the impact of that. So I appreciate your sharing those stories with us.
yeah,
um,
absolutely.
so, before we run out of time, I want you to tell us again a little bit more about Excel College, how families that are probably like, oh, when I need to learn more about this organization,
Yeah.
how can they find out more? And then, how can we, as Teach Them Diligently families, continue to pray? And are there specific needs that we can help meet that you guys are still dealing with up there?
Yeah, great question. So if you want to learn more, theexcelcollege.com/visit. We have a Zoom call every Monday night where we talk about our camp and our college experience.
Hmm.
So in our summer camp this year, students are actually going to be able to spend a day serving, helping rebuild homes in the midst of the rock climbing, water rafting, and the critical thinking, all that kind of stuff. They're going to serve for a day, which is awesome. Um, and we have a launch in April, and we have a launch in September. We had to push our January launch back because of the hurricane.
Yeah,
Um, and then, so that's how you can get involved. So theexcelcollege.com/visit. You can sign up for a Zoom call. And of course, come see us at Teach Them Diligently conferences. So,
absolutely.
and, which by the way, and I'm not just saying this because I'm on the podcast, by, by far our most like targeted audiences and effective conferences, because the heart and spirit is so similar.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah. I'm glad to hear you say that because we totally feel the same way. And like I noted at the beginning of the podcast, as you describe what you do and your heart behind it, it just describes our family so well.
Yeah, yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. And then as far as like how you can be praying for us and how you can help, like I mean it's not easy like balancing the disaster stuff in the college. Like
Mm,
that's been hard, and we're pushing back into like, hey, like we're gonna keep hosting and connecting these volunteers with our community, but like we are really gonna focus in on giving our students the experience that they deserve, and kind of getting the disaster equipment and the bunk trailers and
yeah.
the kitchen trailers and all that kind of stuff off campus and to another property so our students can have that experience again. So just grace for our staff and our students, in that our students have been amazing, but they're ready to have their parking spaces back, and all that kind of
I'm
stuff.
sure.
And yeah, and so I just want to shout them out because like they've been so helpful in the beginning and then so patient. Like it hasn't always been easy, and there's been some frustration with, but overall they've been amazing. And then as far as like help goes, so like one thing we said recently was we don't take government loans. So
Mm.
like UNC Asheville got subsidized. I mean, I don't know if I should say the name of there's a
Another
university. Yeah,
organization in the area.
another another organization in yeah, or another university in our area that was having to cut like $5 million worth of budget earlier last year, magically got a $5 million grant from the
Wow.
government so that
Yeah.
they could for their spring semester. And we just don't get that. So when we push back from January to April, that's like $150,000 in revenue that cost us,
Right.
and that's not easy, for and so we're still raising money for that kind of stuff. And but the prayers for sure, and just um we even had some parents like purchase fun nights for our students, so they like send them to the skating rink or like to a trampoline
Aw,
park and that kind of stuff. So
nice.
so
Nice,
yeah.
nice. Well, we will be sure in the show notes to give all of the links, like how you can find out and get involved in a Zoom call, but also how they can connect if they want to give or provide or meet needs or whatever, to help bridge that gap there with your January to April push, next calendar year. So, Andrew, thank you so much for joining us today and sharing what God is doing up in the Asheville Black Mountain area.
Thank you so much, Leslie. It's a pleasure being on.
Well, it is always a joy. And to the rest of you, I hope that this has been a challenge to the way that you think, not only about continuing and higher education, that's really, really important, but also about how you think about meeting the needs around you, plugging in and being available when God in his sovereignty opens doors for you to serve um, for whatever situation arises. So I encourage you to check out Excel College. I think that you'll be really excited to hear what they do, learn more about them, take a trip up there, see what they've got going on if you're able, learn about their camps. Great opportunities for your kids to grow in the Lord, but also to get some really practical equipping to make them more ready, more prepared for whatever God has for them in the days ahead. So check out the Excel College, and I look forward to talking to you again real soon.